He's Greg Silver. I'm Cyrus Saatsaz. Greg, you know what? I learned something about myself recently. Maybe it's not
What's
something
that?
new, but maybe it's a reminder. I was going to ask you do you know what that is? Uh, when the Warriors lose, I just turn into a totally whiny, moody, bitchy, annoying person. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Really stoked that that's back in the mix. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100, meaning whatever you put in up to $100, they'll match it. So you're playing with double what you put in. That is awesome. So is Greg Silver. He's awesome. You can follow him on Twitter at Greg Silver. The O is an OH. And then if you're on Threads, you can follow him there at Greg Silver, just with an O. You did the heart thing again. What the hell? What is that, dude? Is that on your end?
Yeah, it's me. I'm holding up the O because you say it with a big bang, but it turns into a bunch of hearts. So shout
I
out
have
to
no idea how that's.
StreamYard.
Dude, don't ask me the how of that. That's crazy. Greg, how are you doing tonight, brother? And real quickly, before we get into it, I know you have opinions about the season opener of the Warriors Suns. So share away, man. What was your takeaway from that game? And good to see you, man. How's it going?
Great to see you as always. A couple opening thoughts, I guess. The opener, I thought I summed it up nicely on my Threads account, which was that losing does suck. I'm not going to just act like that didn't happen and I wasn't disappointed. However, I think there's a lot of reasons to either be optimistic or not fully panic. And so I'm choosing to bring the less emotional version to myself or of myself as I come on the show throughout the season, because I think anyone that knows me would laugh at me saying that, given how emotional I have been as a fan. But I've been so spoiled by this team. The dynasty started when I was in my high school days. Now I'm trying to look at it as a broader range and just like take everything for what it is. The second thing I want to say on the note of Threads is you people are wonderful. Like, I've been so pleasantly surprised by the engagement I've had on Warriors related content there. I've had some nice back and forths where me and somebody else have just been talking about basketball without anyone telling me how much they hate my guts or why I'm such a terrible person because I happen to disagree with their opinion. I mean, somebody after the Suns game said, "Thank you for sharing this perspective," like not sarcastically. And I'm just sitting there thinking, wow, this platform is so cool. So thank you. Please hit me with that follow on Threads because I love engaging with all sorts of fans in a respectful manner.
Yeah, I like the platform as well. I'm having fun there. You can follow me on Threads at Dog Wild in case I didn't mention that before. The Warriors are playing Game 2 of the regular season tomorrow night. They're at the Kings. The Sacramento Kings, in my humble opinion, are a damn good team. I would call them even a title contender alongside the Golden State Warriors. One thing that look, there's a lot of things that we can break down in terms of the first game. I feel like we've exhausted the topic a little bit the last two shows, and you just gave your insights a little bit there. But look, the Draymond Green's not going to play again. In fact, why don't we start real quick with a soundbite from Steve Kerr, because earlier today he updated everyone with the Draymond Green status. He's not going to play, but Steve Kerr elaborated regarding the why of that. So why don't we hear from Steve Kerr in terms of why Draymond Green is not going to play tomorrow night. Maybe he'll reveal when we can expect to see Draymond Green, and this is going to lead into the discussion of who should start in his place. First, here's Steve Kerr.
When he first got injured, he said, I'm a fast healer. I think this isn't going to be too long. Is it taking a little bit longer to get back in it? Or
No.
Just conditioning at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's conditioning. It's there's a foundation of strength and conditioning that every player has to build during the preseason. It might have been quicker had it been mid-season, Draymond is a fast healer, but beginning of the season, every player needs to go through the process of building a conditioning and strength foundation. And so Draymond has been doing that diligently. And so he's close.
When he first got in.
Sorry about that. You caught me off guard there. So there you go. So Draymond's not in shape. Look, this has been something that Draymond Green has been guilty of for a lot of his career, which is coming into the season not necessarily ready to go. There's been a lot of seasons where he shows up to training camp just flat out fat, just these pudgy, and then usually by the end of the first month or so, he regains his playing shape. That's what a lot of these athletes do, in all honesty. Nikola Jokic is guilty of that as well. Not being in tip-top shape. Luka Doncic is someone who's very guilty of that, and that's a colossal detriment to him because he hasn't done anything yet, really outside of individual accomplishments. But for his potential, I feel like the Mavericks should be doing more, and Luka should be a little more diligent in terms of his offseason conditioning. But I digress, and that's just my opinion. But Draymond has been guilty of that. Last year was a different story. Unfortunately, he showed up and he knocked out his teammate. And so no one was paying attention to his conditioning anymore because that was the story. But last year he showed up in decent shape. And part of that too was just the fact that he suffered from that back injury the year prior. And he kind of realized, if I want to keep playing this game, I'm going to have to take care of my body a little more specifically his core. But regardless, it is disappointing that he's not ready to go. So the Warriors are stuck once again, not having Draymond available as their starter. And I guess, first of all, Greg, what is your reaction to that Kerr soundbite? Did you take anything away from that besides the fact that we know Draymond's out of shape and hopefully we'll see him soon? What else did you take away from that, if anything?
At this point in Draymond's career, I really didn't take much out of it other than Draymond is Draymond. He is one of one. You take the good with the bad, and we are just in the ride with it for as long as he plays basketball.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the reality of the situation, is where we're at. And it leads into a question that has never really fully been answered. I mean, Draymond wasn't available for the entire preseason. We had the whole drama this summer of Chris Paul, basically not in any regard indicating he'd be happy with coming off the bench. It seems like he's begrudgingly doing so. Steve Kerr had basically a meeting with his big six, letting them know, look, there's six of you, only five can be on that court. So there's going to be nights where one of you won't start. There'll be nights when one of you won't finish a game, and either you go all in or this thing's all for nothing. We're not going to win a title. And they seem to be on board after that. But so far we've seen Chris Paul starting in Draymond Green's place for the most part. I think we had one game in the preseason where Chris Paul came off the bench. I don't like Chris Paul starting with this unit. My bigger issue is Chris Paul and Stephen Curry being out there together. I think that creates a defensive liability. Whatever you get in terms of a positive with those two offensively, and we didn't see that in game one. Steph struggled from beyond the arc. He was 4 of 14. Chris Paul struggled even more. He was 0 for 6 from beyond the arc. So we didn't see anything in terms of three-point shooting lighting it up. But we didn't see those two players really running pick and rolls like we saw them doing in practice. Just nothing stuck out in a positive manner. And when you look at the plus minus, I focused on the 5-man units of the Warriors when it comes to plus minus. What was the most effective 5-man lineups in that Suns game, for example? We could also all research different amounts of players and what their impact was on the court. So I looked up the plus minus of just 2 players, how are twosomes doing out there? And again, not a fully objective statistic because plus minus on 2 players, you have no idea who the other 3 were playing out there with them. But regardless, you get some picture out of this stat. And with plus minus in that opener, Chris Paul and Stephen Curry, when they played together, they were average. They ranked 17 out of all possible 2-man combinations. I believe it's out of 35 or 36. So they were right in the middle among all different 2-man combinations. And then their plus minus together was flat. It was 0. So when those two played together in that game against the Suns and they played 17 minutes together, it was even Steven. The Warriors did not gain more points while they played. They also didn't give up more points when they played. So neither good nor bad. My point is, I don't like it. I just don't like even the idea of these two playing together. To me, the benefit of Chris Paul being on this Warriors team is leading the second unit, is taking on that Sean Livingston role. Sean Livingston didn't play with the starters. You might have seen it briefly in each game, right? I mean, look, minutes are going to overlap. Sometimes, even Curry and Chris Paul might have their minutes combined together, even if you stagger the two players. But for the most part, they're separate entities, right? Like Chris Paul comes in and continues what Steph and Curry hopefully started. Defensively, you don't have this diminutive backcourt of one person 6'2", one person 6 even. And when you have these two defending, as we saw in that Suns game, we're going to see it some more with Kevin Huerter, who's like 6'6", 6'7". You're going to De'Aaron Fox. I can imagine it's just going to blow by these dudes. If one of them ends up defending De'Aaron Fox, although it probably will fall to Wiggins more so, but then Wiggins had a bad game as well. The point is, I don't like seeing these two playing together. When we come back, I would love to get your thoughts. I got some commercials I got to run here real fast. Greg, the floor will be. Look at what are you doing there, man? How did you do that? Can I do that? See, what do you
just put up the thumbs up, man?
Yeah, for the podcast listeners hearing audio, like Greg just shakes his hands, he just does gestures, and his screen turns into like a movie. Like it's just all these crazy effects. Anyways, I have no idea what you're doing there, but it's kind of awesome. So Greg, I want to get your thoughts on the Curry Paul starting backcourt. A backcourt I don't like that much, and I'll obviously check out the people leaving comments in the chat as well. Got to give some love, though, to a couple sponsors. First up is Ibotta, and Ibotta is all about saving money, folks. Look, we're in what some people call inflation. The more accurate way would be to call it corporate greed, but nonetheless, prices are absurd right now, regardless of what you're buying, whether it's food, whether it's gas, clothes. And so why not take advantage of an application, in this case being Ibotta, that will save you money? And look, this year, Thanksgiving's just around the corner. Ibotta is here to give you cash back and help make sure your Thanksgiving table is complete, because who wants turkey without the gravy, right? Like turkey is great, but we know the best part of Thanksgiving dinner is all the sides. And with Ibotta, you can make sure you get the whole family's favorite side dishes covered, the turkey itself, all while getting cash back. So when you go shopping for Thanksgiving, the holidays, in terms of Christmas, all of that money you're about to spend is just around the corner. Save some money with Ibotta. And starting November 1st for the fourth year in a row, Ibotta is getting 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Take advantage of that and so much more. Download the Ibotta app now and use the code LOCKED to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving dinner starting on November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. Again, it's LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use the code LOCKED. Today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Greg, have you played PrizePicks yet?
No, I haven't gotten into it because I think, just being completely honest with everybody here, I'll like rage over fantasy football when my guy gets a 20-yard catch and there's a flag and it gets called back. And that's like a $25 deposit over 3 months. So I don't know how I'd behave if Kevin Durant was like a rebound short against the Lakers of what I bet. But I have friends that do it.
I hear what you're saying. It's fun. And look, a huge perk, obviously, if you're a member of Dub Nation here in California, it's legal in California, unlike some other gaming apps that we have not legalized here yet. And the premise is simple. As Greg mentioned, you're betting on individuals and over-unders. Will Steph Curry score more or less than 31.5 points in the Kings game tomorrow? Will De'Aaron Fox get more or less than 9 assists in that game? It's a minimum of 2 players you got to bet on, a maximum of 6. If you bet on 6 and you hit that, you can win up to $1 million. It's crazy. So go check out the app, download it. It's super fun. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100, meaning whatever amount you put in up to $100, they will match it. So when you start playing, you're playing with double what you put in. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, use the code LockedOnNBA for that first deposit match up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, we thank you sincerely for your loyalty. Tomorrow night, immediately following regular season game number 2, it's post-game action live right here. Kylan Mills will join me, and we're going to break down what we hope will be a Warriors team that is back to 500 and not down to 0-2. And that's what the discussion is right now. I'm being joined by Greg Silver. You can follow him on Twitter at Greg O Silver. The O has an H in it. Over on Threads, it's Greg O Silver. The O does not have an H there. Greg, are you happy with this backcourt? Chris Paul and Stephen Curry. Do you want to see it broken up so that a CP3 is leading the second unit? What are your thoughts on that? You're muted, buddy. You're muted. I can't hear you. Greg, I can't hear you at all.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. I've done that too. It's all good. I've done it.
I feel like to give you the best answer, I could probably give you my full response to the who should start tomorrow question, if that's all right.
Love it.
So yeah, I liked your poll. Choice number 1 and what I voted for would be Jonathan Kuminga. I think we all want him to see that next step taken for him. And
real quick, just to interrupt you real fast. You're referring to a poll. Again, you can follow me on Threads at Dog Wild. Again, Threads is blowing up, man. A couple people in the chat were ripping on it. I get it, but Mark Zuckerberg, whatever. But yeah, the one thing about Threads, well, a couple things. One, you know who the person is if they have the blue check mark. Verifying identity is important when you're battling misinformation. 2, you can flag misinformation. So if you see utter BS, you can actually get that stuff checked out and get removed. So we don't have just a bunch of lies and propaganda floating around. And 3, like you said, people there are actually a lot nicer. Like you don't like I feel like on Twitter, every single person there is just trying to win arguments. Every person there is just trying to like get their voice heard, right? It's just a lot of people that like have opinions and they're like, I want to be heard, God damn it. Whereas on Threads, people are just kind of it's just a lot more chill. I don't see the people antagonizing others. I don't sense the ego as much. At least Zuckerberg's not trying to force his politics in your face. But anyway, so that's why you and I think are more into Threads. And so now on Threads, you can do polls. And so I did a poll up there. This just was introduced today. You can do GIFs. You can do polls. It's slowly getting there in terms of features when it comes to matching up with Twitter. And so I put a poll question up there, which was who should start in place of Draymond Green? And the 3 options were Chris Paul, Jonathan Kuminga, and Dario Saric. I don't know if I should have included Moses Moody or anyone else, but so far Jonathan Kuminga is winning that poll handily with 80% of the vote. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Greg. Floor is yours again. I just had to add some context to what you were saying. Thank you.
No problem at all. I'm glad that you were able to show that poll feature. It was a fun one. And so I voted for Kuminga, and I think that's the top choice because we all want him to see just take that next step. And I think starting in a game against a playoff team provides a big opportunity for him. It gives the Warriors some youth, athleticism, and length against a young and fast team. And it'd be good to see Kuminga out there in a high-stakes situation. Steve Kerr has been willing to give him the keys a little bit more. He had him out there in crunch time in the opener. So that would be my go-to. Second would be Dario Saric. And that's kind of just because why not? Like, there are going to be a lot of lineup variations and experimentation this season, and we're probably going to see all sorts of looks all the way up through Christmas. So I think Dub Nation needs to sit back and be patient and just kind of absorb it. Saric on paper is the type of player who would function better in a unit led by Chris Paul, but anyone who's ever come through this organization in the last 10 years knows that it all runs through Steph, and it always has. So if it doesn't work, take him out after 3 to 4 minutes, but maybe just by having him in the starting lineup, we learn something in a super Dario starting lineup that we might not have learned or been able to see before. Chris Paul would be my third choice, and I want to just say a few things about that because he isn't my ideal starter in place of Draymond Green tomorrow, but I do feel like there is a purpose in sticking him out there with Steph Curry in doses. Like, in general, I agree. I like that you brought up Sean Livingston. I was thinking a lot about this over the last couple hours and definitely thought like, oh yeah, like Sean Livingston was a great leader for that second unit. His game is very different from Chris Paul's, and they have a very different build, but I really want to see CP3 run that second unit and just play some big boy basketball. I think this team has depth. I was actually really impressed with Chris Paul's debut. He just provides this kind of steadiness that has helped a lot and is going to help a lot with what the Warriors' biggest weakness has been for years, which is turnovers. The one thing I'll say and reason I want to see him and Steph play together sometimes is because in must-win situations like the playoffs, Steve Kerr is going to throw the 5 people out there that he trusts the most in a cohesive unit, which could very well include the best player that's ever walked through this franchise and one of the most high IQ players we've seen of the last generation. Now, you mentioned when 2 people are out there together, it's like not always the most telling stat. And, maybe those other 3 would have to be Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Kevon Looney to get you some size and experience and championship DNA and all those sort of other intangible factors. But I do think there's value in seeing Chris Paul out there with Steph Curry. I just don't think it needs to be a 20 minutes per game sort of thing. Let's open up the first 7 minutes and close the last 7 minutes that way. But I do think there's value in it. And I just want to encourage everyone to pump the brakes on just being completely adverse to seeing them out on the court together at all so early in the season. That's kind of what I've thought about in the last couple hours.
No, you're absolutely right. Steve Wilton, by the way, suggesting to start Gary Payton II to guard De'Aaron Fox. Might not be the worst idea, but I would not count on Gary Payton II actually starting. Nice suggestion, but it's not rooted in reality. We all know Steve Kerr by now. Greg, who do you think Steve Kerr will actually start? Are you expecting another night of Chris Paul and Steph, or do you think he actually will introduce some ingenuity and maybe surprise the Kings a little bit?
Honestly, I think it could go either way. And I know that's not the most exciting answer to offer, but Steve Kerr's someone who is very rooted in his habits and, to his credit, is worked a lot of the time. That said, he's also done really weird things at times, like starting Nick Young in playoff games here and there throughout the run. So I think we really could get either way. And I think that it's going to be a calculated decision one way or another. It just might be the same result we saw in the opener.
Yeah, good call on that. And look, in Kerr's defense, it was a pleasant surprise seeing Jonathan Kuminga finish the opening night game. I mean, I think everyone expected, regardless of how good or bad Andrew Wiggins was playing, and by nearly every measurable, he was playing awful. And we still don't know what happened there. But it was nice to see that Kerr can be open-minded. I mean, to see Kuminga finish the game was huge. I love that. So I just want to give some kudos to Steve Kerr for that. When we come back, I'm going to reveal which 2 players on the Warriors are the most effective based off plus minus. Because again, I was doing some research the last couple of days on that data, and the answer might surprise you a little bit. And we're also going to preview again a little more of the Kings and Warriors. A lot more to talk about. The Lakers and Suns are playing right now. We got a few thoughts on that as well. First, though, got to give some love to another one of our sponsors. As the NBA season's back, we're rolling with organizations that fund our operation. Can't thank you enough. FanDuel is next up. And look, NFL season's here. The 49ers got a big game this Sunday. We still don't know if Brock Purdy is going to be playing. I don't even know what the line is for that game. There might not even be a line. Do you know, Greg? Have you looked at it recently?
I have not looked at it, and I, more importantly, have not looked at the FanDuel line.
Right. I'm curious because, look, Brock Purdy's under concussion protocol, and my guess is the line's going to be way different if you're talking about Brock Purdy versus Sam Darnold, right? So I'm looking at the line right now. It's Niners minus 4.5. Wow. The OU is 43.5. You're talking about a Niners team that's on 6 days rest. The Bengals had a bye week last week. So I might, even though I love my Niners, I might lean toward the Bengals right there. That's interesting. Regardless, snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers right now get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place just a $5 bet. $200. That's what those bonus bets are. It's as good as cash. Just by gambling $5, win or lose, you get $200. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. There's got spreads, player props, over-unders, anything imaginable you want to bet on. It's available with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season and the NBA season. You can bet on that and pretty much every other sport as well. So again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of the NBA and the NFL.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Friendly reminder for the everydayers that Friday night, tomorrow night, we're coming to you live immediately following the Warriors and the Kings. Kyla Mills will join me for that. Right now, though, Greg Silver joins me. You can follow him on Twitter at Greg O Silver. The O is in OH. And again, it's Greg O Silver on Threads, but there is no H. It's just O. If you had to guess, I think, Greg, I told you what the answer to this is. But if you had to guess, try to play along here. Who would you have guessed led the Warriors in terms of the two-player combinations leading in plus minus? What would be your guess before I reveal that answer?
Well, I do know the answer,
Yeah,
but
no.
however, if I'm to just get rid of that and try to like play along and, really think about the game, I probably would put Moses Moody in there because he didn't play a large chunk of minutes and he was really effective when he was on the floor. But he also, maybe I'd pick someone who played in the third quarter too, though. So maybe Moses Moody, Chris Paul would be my answer.
Yeah, Drew brings out Moody and Kuminga, who did play fantastic ball together. Moody and Kuminga were, let me see if I can find them on here. They were not high. They're actually pretty low. Oh, here they are. Okay, so they were in -3. They were well into the 20s. So no, that is not the correct answer. Let's see if there's any other guesses before I reveal what that answer is in the chat. I don't see any other guesses. I really quickly, before I give the answer, want to.
How was my guess?
Your guess is not
CP3 and Moody.
Let me see real fast. What are your guesses again? CP3 and Moody. Not good.
I'm
-2.
not allowed back on the show.
-2. So they're kind of down there as well. The answer is going to surprise you a little bit. Real fast though, I want to give love to Gat because you bring up Usman Garuba. Whoops, that's not the right one. We haven't seen him at all. And I'm glad you brought Usman Garuba up, Gat. I've been thinking about him as well. Why is it that last year Steve Kerr is playing these two-way players that in reality not many people wanted to see? I sure as did not want to see those two playing. And then this year they've got a whole bunch of two-way players I would love to see. I want to see Lester Quinones. I want to see Usman Garuba, not Jerome Robinson. I could pass on that, but I do want to see Usman Garuba really badly. Why are we not seeing that, Greg? You know the answer. You and Steve Kerr are best friends. What's going on? Tell the world. Why is Steve Kerr not playing Garuba?
If I'm going to just take a page out of the book of Trice from the postgame, I just think the coaching style isn't to immediately throw rookies into the fire. And I know last year we would have liked to see more Moody and more Kuminga, but I can understand not playing Pajemski and TJD as much as I would have liked to see them on Tuesday. I can understand it because it's like, well, name a good time for them to have come into the game just from the, hey, it's your first NBA game. Why don't you go and come in clutch for us? It's like second quarter was going disastrous. We couldn't play defense, go into the half down 15. Third quarter, it's actually going well and we're making a run. So what, do you want to throw them in early fourth when we're like finally getting back into the game? I don't think so. Hopefully other games present it. The Suns are really good. That was a tough game to put in rookies. Or inexperienced players. Yeah,
I want to see Usman Garuba really badly. I hope we do see him at some point. We barely even saw him in the preseason. Real fast, the best two-player combinations for the Warriors in terms of plus minus. I'll go from 5 to 1. Tied for fifth or three sets. Klay Thompson, Dario Saric, Gary Payton II, and Jonathan Kuminga. Gary Payton II and Moses Moody. They were all plus 10, and they played good chunks of minutes together. 11.3, 11.6. and 12.2 minutes together. So they were tied for fifth. The fourth best combination in terms of plus minus with plus 11 from that Warriors Suns game was Chris Paul and Gary Payton II. You're starting to get a little theme here. There's one player you're going to hear a lot of in all these. So Chris Paul and Gary Payton II were a plus 11 in 16 minutes played together. Third best was Klay Thompson and Gary Payton II. They were a plus 12. They played 15 minutes together. The second best was Chris Paul and Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, I think offensively struggled a lot, but he didn't have a horrible game. Like Kylan and I yesterday said that if you had to, use an adjective to describe his game, we said okay, right? Like, because
No,
defensively, he was
I am actually very pro Clay with how he did defensively, defending KD and Booker. He was
right.
way better than Wiggins, and offensively would have liked to see more consistency. But if he hits 2 more shots, people are like acting completely different. I'll
You're
stand
absolutely
by
right.
that.
You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And the team was successful when he was on the court. There's a reason why Kerr gave him those 36 minutes to lead the team. So Chris Paul and Klay Thompson were the second most effective combination. They were a plus 14. They played 31 minutes together. And then the most effective duo was Dario Saric and Gary Payton II. I don't know if anyone would have guessed that. And they were far and away the best duo. When Saric and Gary Payton II were on the court together, they played together for 14 minutes. They were a plus 19. Like, no one else even stepped up close to him. And speaking of those two players, Dario Saric was asked his opinion on Gary Payton II's defense. Gary Payton II struggled offensively, similar to a lot of players in that Suns game. He was 0 for 7 from, I'm sorry, he was 0 for 5 from the field, 0 for 2 from beyond the arc. Those 2 missed threes were particularly cringeworthy because they were shot from the corner, which is his sweet spot, and it wasn't sweet that night. But nonetheless, his defense was outstanding. The dude is clearly back to 2022 level athleticism and physique. He looks healthy compared to last year. So here's Dario Saric talking about having Gary Payton II as a teammate, particularly on the defensive side of the ball.
Dario, what do you like playing with Gary Payton II? He seems like he's such an active defensive player, especially on the court.
He's probably one of the best defensive player, especially on perimeter I ever play. So obviously he's like giving us like that kind of force defensively. It's easier to guard a pick and roll when you have like that kind of guard who can like avoid the screens, who can be really present on the ball, who can really be active on the ball, and his runs offensively, his shots, offensively is like giving us really, really good force offensively, and like I'm really enjoying playing with him. He's a great guy, and he's playing with amazing force with a heart. He's leading hard every game on the court.
Yeah, I love Gary Payton II. That was one of the few bright spots last year was when they traded to get him back. Steve Wilton adding a good comment, I think, saying Saric would have looked a lot better if he didn't miss all those layups. There were, and I think Gary Payton II missed a layup or two as well. So any reaction to hearing Dario Saric, their Croatian wonder? I still feel bad for calling him Serbian last week. Any thoughts on his comments there?
I mean, I think it fits into the larger theme of this team really striving for connectivity and cohesion. So in that sense, I'm really optimistic about it. And, I think that if a few plays go differently or the Warriors shoot better than 35% overall, then we're talking about this first game in an entirely different light. So lots to be optimistic about. They're far from a finished product, but it's good to see that there's a lot of chemistry from a guy that was, there and then gone and then came back last year, and a guy that's never played in a Warriors uniform. So it's cool.
You absolutely got that right. Greg, before we started the show, I asked you during our pre-show meeting, I'm being very flippant saying that. That really just means some text messages back and forth. But I asked you to provide any thoughts you have on the Warriors and that 14th roster position. And Drew brought that up in the show earlier today. He asked if it's a he. Do we have any update on 14th? It is a peculiar situation that the Warriors have put themselves in. They have 13 players on the roster. They have to fill that 14th by November 6th. And by doing this, not filling that spot until the 6th, they're using up a lot of days. I think like every team has some like 100 days in the regular season where they can dip below 14, and the Warriors are using a lot of those right now. In your opinion, what do you think they're gonna do? And is there anyone out there that really sticks out to you that you'd like them to add?
Well, first of all, I'm a little sad because the Lakers are about to beat the Suns, but Devin Booker didn't play tonight. It's okay. Life goes on. Back to the 14th spot. When I think of a 14th roster spot, I'm not thinking about an incredible night in, night out fit for the team that's going to be playing 10 minutes a night. I'm thinking more about like what Matt Barnes was in 2017. like some
Oh,
guy that can come in
yeah.
and just give you these random spurts of life off the bench, maybe sometimes be a little reckless. And the guy that I kind of liked, just thinking about it and looking through some of the free agents, I know he's 31 years old, and I know he's undersized for a center, listed only at 6'8", but he's got a 7'6" wingspan, and his name is Bismack Biyombo. And the thing about these 14th roster spots is like they're these low risk, high reward situations. And Biyombo kind of plays like a maniac, if I'm being honest. Like he could be an interesting flavor to add to the pot in a playoff series. He's an emotional player. It could really help against lengthier opponents when you got to see them between 4 and 7 times. And individually in his career, he's actually had a pretty solid defensive rating. I mean, his highest was 112.6 back in the 2020 to 2021 season when he was with Charlotte. And then more recently in Phoenix, it was around that like 107 mark. But I don't think he'd be a problem defensively. I think like Kuminga, he offers length, but just many more years of experience. And he's always been an emotional player. And I see Steve in the chat saying, what's his basketball IQ? I don't know. I'm guessing that if it's not that high, Steve Kerr is not even going to consider putting him on the roster. With the way they've approached this offseason,
Agreed.
making a big trade to get a guy like Chris Paul and give up a young, talented player like Jordan Poole. But so, yeah, it's, that there's a lot of ifs. But when I'm just kind of looking at the larger cloud of what's out there, what could be good, I see some potential upsides with this Bismack Biyombo guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that. My sneaking suspicion is that it's going to be Rudy Gay, and that they did this to save some money because right now the Warriors don't have to pay anyone's salary. And when you talk about even a minimum deal and not paying them for a month, I saw somewhere that adds up with all the luxury tax penalties to almost $1 million that they're saving. So it would not surprise me if that's why they're doing what they're doing. I am a little curious to see what happens. Genji Gok says, Boogie Cousins, not a chance in hell. Steve Kerr does not want Boogie. I think a lot of people in the organization are over him. Same with the entire NBA. So, while I'm personally not opposed to that, I'm just giving you the pragmatic answer, the reality of this situation. Real fast, this is not necessarily Warriors related, but I saved it for the end of the show. Just to address these real fast. Steve Wilton hating on Greg, you and I using Threads, saying no one's using it. Dude, no one's using Twitter, bro, except for the people that are still on there. That is a dead platform. Threads, last we checked, they're a publicly shared company, have over 100 million users now and growing. And look, I'm on there. I'm getting engagement, dude. The thing's blowing up. So if you don't like it, more power to you, but that's what I'm using.
By the way, I'm not
yeah.
saying I'm pro Mark Zuckerberg by any means, but like you said,
Same.
he just doesn't shove his views right up your
Exactly.
face. And I don't even want to talk about the other guy.
Well, and Greg, he's not an anti-Semite. So I mean, like I mean, that's the honest truth. If you're talking about the founder of Twitter right now, the dude's an anti-Semite. So if for no other reason, I'm done with that platform for that. Genji Gok says misinformation is too often used by the establishment. Do me a favor. When you use words like establishment, that's a generalization. That is actually a stereotype. Be specific. Otherwise, that is called a logical fallacy. Don't stereotype every single media member as being part of the quote-unquote establishment. That's cynical. And again, that is a stereotype. And Bliney Maynard writes, who is the arbiter of misinformation? How about people who have journalism degrees, for starters? I'm a journalism professor, and my students, first and foremost, are learning how to discertain objectivity from subjectivity. And that's who a lot of the fact checkers are for platforms like Instagram and Threads. It's a shame that Twitter doesn't even have someone who's an arbiter, who's actually flagging this stuff. So anyways, I wanted to save that for the end of the show. We're done. Greg, love you, man. People can follow you again on Twitter at Greg O. Silver with the H, Greg O. Silver without the H. And there's your heart right there, man. There you go. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back at it tomorrow night. Post game, Warriors Kings. Let's hope the Warriors win their first game of the season. Greg, thanks, brother. It was fun. And there you go again. We'll be back at it soon.
Go Dub!
Bye-bye.